Semechano, Mania Injilin Chingisane, $30 주갈 드린 헬립 어다이틀라. 한국들은 얼리 억득 예라 뭘 멤버 치킨 멤버를 임 징산에 job kin director Mongol American Soil Halbane director. Okay. Welcome everybody. Our ceremony going to start now. His opening remark is Bimba Achin going to give opening remark. He is the director of Chinggis Khaan Memorial Foundation and Mongol American Association. Please.
Samaro, Mende, and greetings to all in attendance. I'm happy to welcome you to the 37th annual Chinggis Khaan Memorial Ceremony. We are honored to have the former ambassador to Mongolia, Michael Klichevsky, and the current ambassador to the United Nations, Mr. Umpire Neamdorj, here in attendance with us today. Greetings to all who have come here near and far and to participate in this solemn remembrance and to celebrate our heritage and our Mongol culture. We are proud Mongol Americans who are not only proud and thankful to be a part of the United States of America, the greatest country in the world. We are also deeply proud of our ancestry and our noble Mongolian cultural heritage. This gives us a unique perspective of understanding and appreciating American culture and also our Mongol culture, kind of the best of both worlds. Whereas we love and honor our adopted country here for the opportunities and freedoms that we have, so we have and honor the land and the people from which we originated. Therefore, we congregate once again today to give our thanks to this great country, as well as to commemorate and honor our precious cultural heritage. We ask for the blessings of the eternal blue sky, Mont Tengut, and to ask for the spirit of Chinggis Khaan to be with us here today for this ceremony and for his blessings. In closing, I would like to once again thank all in attendance for this program and all the participants, our honored guests, and for the organizing committee for all the selfless work that they have done to make this possible. And also to honor the founders of this ceremony who I believe would be proud that the tradition and rituals that they have brought here to America continues. Thank you very much. Ich Barla.
Next, I would like to ask everybody stand up for 3 seconds for memorizing our founding members of Mongol American Cultural Association. Thank you. Please sit down. дараагын манай Монгол Америкийн соёлын холбооны дарга Занжи албанаас Чингис хааны тайлгийн 9 ямтны ёслолыг удирдах явна. Next, Director of Mongol American Cultural Association, Sanjay Altan going to lead Chinggis Khan Memorial Ritual, 9 Yamten Ritual. Thank you.
Thank you, Chalu. Okay, so a few words about the Chinggis Khan Memorial Ceremony. This is the 37th such memorial ceremony in the United States, and we're proud to have this opportunity to continue this tradition to commemorate and honor the memory of our great ancestral leader, Chinggis Khan. The ritual itself consists of 17 steps. Each step is a invocation or a blessing or a call for peace and unity and harmony. And it's really captured the essential intention of Chinggis Khan in uniting the Mongol nation. So with that, we'll begin the procession. So the Yamten can come in now. I will. The first step begins with Khaan reading the Ezinsan text. Khaan 어떤 Ezinsan omsen.
Эзэн
Khaan 어떤
Умсан амгалан бол тугай. Зээ сод богд Чингис хаан үжин хатны хамтаар заяат төшмөд нүгцэлд бүгдээр баясаад суун соёрох. Ариун дахил сэтгэл өгөө зогсолтхийн өвгөн өгөө. 100 амт хүрдсэн идээний дээж сүүний амт хүрдсэн аршааны шимээр чин сэтгэлээр хичээнгүйлэн дахин байдаг. Зээ богд Чингис нүгэл өгөө нэгнэ ариун их дахлаа зоогол бадрангуй их гал олонтоо сахин соёрох. Балрашгүй төрөө бадчуулан соёрох. Хамаг Монголоо хайрлан өршөө хамтран мөлхөмбөхийн хотгийг хайрл. Зээ сод богд Чингис хаанаас эхлэн суутай хатан үжин эхийн сахиусан хийгээд сүр ихэд сүлдийн сахиусан хийгээд сүс ихэд өрлөг ноёд танаа. Ариун цэцэг өнөрт хүчис амтад идээн арх сархтаан өргөнөм ач хүрсээ ивэн соёрох. Аштын амгаланг хайрлан соёрхоо.
In the second step, said we prepare the lamp offering, the Zolar. Said we. And Jonan makes the actual offering. Hocha reads the full text now. Hocha.
Аврагчаа хаан болд Чингис хатны хин гэгээнээр хан уул ач нартаа хамаг Монгол өөрөөсөө гэгээн гэрэлт зулаан хичээнгүйлэн насгаж сүсэг бишлийн туйлаас сүгдэн мөргөн өргөнөмлөд өргөснөө нөршөөж амстаа найрч сансныг минь бүтөөж жорсныг минь хөргөн хайрхаа.
Hocha prepared the cake offering. Hocha. That's by our 저는 prepared to give. I'm prepared to give an offering. Hunjin now reads the cue text. Hunjin.
Авраач хаан богд Чингис хатан ихийн гэгэндээ хан уул ачнаар тань хамаг Монгол улстан ариун эндрхий бай алган дээрээ дэлгэж хүндэтгэлийн туйлаа илтгэн хүсэр сүрдэн өргөнөн мэд өргснөөр өршөөж амлаар айлтаж бодсны минь бүтээж хайрлноо.
Tuli now prepares the wine offering. Jonah now offers the wine. Coco now reads the wine text. Coco.
аврагч хаан богд Чингис хатан ихийн гэгэндээ хан уул ачнаар тань хамаг Монгол улстан уусан саарны дээж ургасан тараанашин сартын дээжэн кичэнгүлэн өргөнөн гэд өргөстийн ман зоог амсныг ман айлтмоо ардал нарыг тань дурссуу алтан зургаалыг тань дагасуу уучин бошхыг тань манасуу ууга боломтыг тань сахисуу.
Jonah now reads the sixth text.
Тэнгэрээс зяатай дэлхий төнэй вэстэй дэлгэр Монголоо мандуулсан дээд төр Чингис хаан алтан дэлхий даалдартай 10 зүгт цуураатай Аадрыг доослосон алдар ихэд Чингис хаан хагацснаа хамтруулсан хамаг Монголоо нэгтгэсэн хаан тусыг байгуулсан хараа ихэд Чингис хаан агуу нэритэн магтаасуу уугаа үлситэн дурдаасуу алтан босгойтэн хамгаалаасуу ашит удамтитэн сахиасуу гал удамтэн бадраад газар оронтэн дэгжрээд үндэсэн нугсаатан хөгжөөд 우리 국가는 어미 두배.
Jonah now reads the Tugel text.
두배. 오가 복딘 우리스. 아떤 야스나 두르스. 아부 드린 하마드치. 아뜻 월직이 두배. 오도스 몽고딘 드르트. 오산 절개를 주특슨 유른 흐득 이슨 흐득 내 우리스 투베 함가 거인 오도 모르나 함목 봉고딘 어두기 늑득인 하동 모던티 스킨 함가득 아스 몽고 쪽 투베 뱅그로운가 생각나완 비누사한 단독특단 우스일단 마타하마다치 우르 몽고 좋트가 춘드루네 운슨 니기든 데리스킨 노로나 옥사 니기든 아르우르 하자라 우야토와 하즈메 아뜻 몽고딘 우리스트걸
Mangla, now prepare the hearth offering. Mangla. Jung makes the hearth offering. Now we do the Jung performs the hearth ceremony and then the convocation. All the Yamtit circle.
자, 저동학도 좁힌 부분은 독특체하는 한국 우르스탄의 함일진에 이렇게 다바체하는 함일진에게겐 한국 우르스탄의 훈득시겐서이호 에루스민 에이나르 에이프초도 에이프타용 에이부훈
Jung now reads the Talmud text. Oh, I'm sorry. You have to return the arrow now.
아메리코스인 에리겐벳 아뜻 몽고딘 우리스벳 소윗 오tumstan бардамнамбет сурвалжуулсан барханамбет тэжээксэн орноо хөгжидий төргсөн орноо мандуудыг үндсэн хоорондын найрамдлыг өргөж өгсөн ирэнэн 아동과학인 다운 후크대 적대 다운 무슨 안바가 하네 아롱 후크대 아동네 아롱 호로 노트 하원 하네 가방 후크식 에이다른티 에크리아
And that concludes the ritual ceremony itself, and the Yamkin can proceed out now.
I would like to welcome all the children. I would like to welcome all the children to greet Chinggis Khaan. Okay. Now, to
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Engpayar Mendorch, permanent representative of Mongolia here at the United Nations. Let me say a few things in English and with the translation, since here we have fellow Mongolians. And let me start by saying that Mr. Altansanj and distinguished representatives of the Mongolian communities here in New York area, dear brothers and sisters, and dear friends and honored guests. Ноён Алтан санж Нью-Йорк хот орчмын монголчуудаа элэг нэг дахан дүүсээ. Эрхэм хүндэт найз нөхөд хүндэт очдоо. I'm very pleased to join you all today in celebrating the great Chinggis Khaan Day, a day that holds profound significance for Mongolians around the world. Today we not only to celebrate a great leader and visionary, but also the enduring spirit of our people and our rich heritage that has transcended centuries and borders. Өнөөдөр та бүхэнтэй хамт дэлхийн монголчуудын хувьд чухал өдөр болох агуу Чингис хааны өдрийг тэмдэглэж байгаадаа туйлын баяртай байна. Өнөөдөр бид алсын хараатаа агуу удирдагчийг тэмдэглээ зогсохгүй олон зуун жилийн турш олон улс орныг хамарч ирсэн ард түмний маань баялаг өвөлмжлөлийг тэмдэглэхээр цуглаад байна. Chinggis Khaan was more than great leader. He was unifier and strategist who valued wisdom, diplomacy, and inclusiveness. His vision went beyond the boundaries of the Mongol Empire. It established the principles that have influenced governance, trade, and cultural exchanges across civilizations. Today, his legacy reminds us of the values of unity, resilience, and respect for diversity. Chinggis Khaan бол агуу өдөртөгчдүүдгүй цэцэн ухаан, дипломат ур чадвар, хүртээмжтэй байдлыг эрхэмлэн нэгтгэсэн захирагч, стратегч байлаа. Түүний алсын хараа Монголын эзэн төрний хил хязгаарыг тэлхээс гадна засаглалын шинжилэл, худалдаа, соёлын солилцоог хөгжүүлж, хүн төрөлхтний түүхэнд үнэтэй хөв нэмэр оруулсан соёл иргэншлийг бүтээсэн юм а. Өнөөдөр түүний үлдээсэн өвн бидэнд эв нэгдэл, төсвөр хадуужил, олон янз байдлыг хүндэтгэх үнэт зүйлсийн ач холбогдлыг дахин сануулсаар байна. As we gathered here, thousands of miles away from our homeland, we recognize the importance of our heritage and the strength of our community. It is heartening to see so many Mongolian ethnic groups united here, not only to honor our shared history, but also to foster a sense of unity that transcends geographic distance. Your contributions here in the United States as proud Mongolians serve as a bridge between our heritage and diverse and vibrant society we live in. Бид эх орноосоо хэдэн мянган бээрийн асад энэхүү онцгой өдөр цуглан өв соёл хамт олонныхоо эв нэгдлийн чухлыг онцлон тэмдэглэж байна. Монголын олон үндэстэн ястнууд бидний хамтын түүхийг дэдэлж газар зүйн байршлыг үл харгалзан эв нэгдлийг төлөвшүүлэхийн төлөө энэхүү нэгдэж байгаа нь гайхалтай. Америкийн нэгдсэн улсад амьдарч буй монголчууд та бүхний оруулж буй хөв нэмэр нь бидний өв уламжлал янз бүрийн төлөөлөлтөд нийгэмтэй холбогдох гүр болж байна. Let us celebrate today not only by remembering the achievements of the Chinggis Khaan, but also looking for the future. Let us work together to pass down our traditions and language and our values to the next generation, so they too can carry forward the strength and the wisdom of our heritage. Chinggis Khaan-ийнхаа суу алдрыг дурсахын зэрэгцээ ирээдүгээ чиглэсэн өнөөдрийг хамтдаа тэмдэглэе. Өв соёл, хэл, үнэт зүйлсээ хооч үедээ өвлүүлэн үлдээхийн төлөө бид бүгдээрээ нэгэн сэтгэлээр зүтгэцгээе. Thank you for being here and for your dedication to our shared culture and for honoring this important day with your presence. May the legacy of Chinggis Khaan continue to inspire us all. Энд хүрэлцэн ирж бидний хамтын соёл хүндэтгэлтэй хандаж энэ хүч чухал өдрийг бидэнтэй тэмдэглэж буй та бүхэнд талархаж байна. Чингис хааны агуу уламжлал бид бүхэнд урам зориг хүч чадал хайрлах болтугай. May we celebrate this important day together in unity. Thank you for your attention. Энэ чухал өдрийг эвнэглийн дор тэмдэглэж байгаадаа баяртай байна. Та бүхэнд их баярлалаа.
Thank you for giving my speech. Дараагийн манай Mongol төмний төлөөлөгч үг ярих байна. Next one is community representative from Mongolian community going to give a speech. First one is Tuvan speaker. It's Robert McLaughlin. Robert is a performer and he performs various Tuvan songs and music.
My name is Robert. Sorry, it's been a while since I've been at this event. I had sort of a bit of a hiatus because in about 2021, after my second visit to Tuva, I decided to move there, and the timing was not exactly ideal because I got there in about November 2021, and then by February, Russia had invaded Ukraine, and I was technically really the last American living in Tuva, and Tuva is very small, so the FSB doesn't have a lot to do, so they tend to look very closely at foreigners. So I made my very quick exit out of there. At that time, it was a very difficult time because I've become very close to Tuva, and to see such a strange world event happen, it was quite painful, honestly. And so where I went was across the border to Mongolia, and what I found there was a very safe place for people who were also in a similar situation, who were living in Russia, specifically people who, were Mongolians beyond the border. The country Mongolia created a very safe place for many of the minority people to go. I'm not Tuvan myself, obviously. So I've been a part of sort of Tuvan culture for about almost 15 years now, somewhere around 14, 15 years. And the one thing that I've noticed that is very much common among all of the people who are under Chinggis Khan is hospitality. And I think that this value is the most important thing, and that was the thing that was shown to me most by every community of people that I've been around who are descendants of the great Chinggis Khan. So mostly I just also want to express my gratitude for that among this community, among every community. And unfortunately there are people from Tuva who are really Tuvan people couldn't make it today, but I'm also very honored to represent them as I've dedicated my life to preservation of Tuvan culture, Tuvan language, Tuvan songs. So I'm just very thankful and thankful for the openness of the Mongolian community in accepting Tuva, even though Tuva has been across the border for so long. It's quite an amazing thing to see, and I guess really the one thing we can hope for is that at some point maybe the borders won't matter so much anymore, and that we can all be as they're meant to be, so thank you.
Karavan Helmut Mongin Tululuk Darina Kitewa. Darina is a scholar and professor from Kalmykia. Please welcome.
би халмык таңчасы ирсин халмык күн. Мана өкнөр Монгол экнуткасы салат нюгат, Европ тират, халмык таңчан токтагат, дөрбүн зун жил болжана. Мана эргинтки улус оңдан келте, оңдан шачта, сойылта. Бидни Европты гансын Монгол келте улусы бедин. Тоғарын сön болу үшін бидни икулсты шингирсин койдун. Монгол келерин келебедин бедин. Бурган шажыдан sütevene bidin. Zang berçan berevene bidin. O da endirki bolcakı sahın üçün doğdukçu. Diyemi Chinggis Khan'a taliği bolcakı yürü yovdu yer 13'ta. Yunga dikla eni Chinggis Khan madnigi Mongol ulusuga nigdulcakı temdik. Diga çimbi iksan jana kök tengirdur kırsta gazdır deyre. 10 gün dörgün saktı. En keverin Mongol ulus ösçü. Doğarın önür bayın bolcu. Chinggis Khan'a nerin mandlulcu. Maların oğlun bolcu, bayın bolcu. Sarayın çigin oğlun jerden men dambolun bäxigi oğlun dey söşatxa. Endir öne yüyle yoldu kejahulus bası. Utnasa kişkita bolcu, sansın sanan kütçe, kesin yülün bütçe. Men damolun verce, mangla çengir makla xoran yoxigi. Ezin bok Chinggis Khan öşacı olduqa.
Dr. Geneva gave a very warm greeting on the occasion of the 37th ceremony. She said that she was representing the Kalmyk Mongol community and mentioned that that the Kalmyks came from Central Asia, became part of Europe, but despite being part of Europe, retained their culture, retained their religion, retained their traditions, and she gave a very warm congratulatory message on this occasion that blessings and benedictions to all who were part of this event. Thank you, Dorina.
Daragın Burat Monголын төлөөлөгч Демичи Ayuryo. Ayuryo Burat'ın sılımgın kaşısı тэр бол бөрөө хоорчин Ayuryo. Not here. He is coming, sir. Тэр бөрөө хоор тоглоод нэлээд 30-аад илүү жил тоглож хийж байгаа аюултай урлагч юм байна.
Сандалу түгүнэ Монгол сатаар зам өнөөдөр би жил бүр явж байгаа нарах хэмжээнд оролцож байхдаа сэтгэл санаа их баяртай юм. Танадаа өнөөдөр хараад алтан шараагаараа энэ ордныг гэрэлтүүлж байхдаа хараад бас их баяртай байна. Тэгээд нэг түрүү энэ арга хэмжээ зохион байгуулж байгаа чолоогүй сандралтангүй чимддүүгүй нарта хөөсөн захны хөсөд энэ тамаар хэмжээ жилбэр явуулдаг. Тэгээд эдийн оролцож байгаадаа баяртай. Тэгээд хүй сайн захны хөсөд хамтаа гэж химэтнэ дэвэр хийж байг сансан гэрдээ номын сор бүтэж байх утгаа. Тэгээд гэрээсээ нутгасаа хоногсоор сансан гэрдээ номын сор бүтэж өргөднэ намтыг тэнтэй болж нэг сайхан нартын өдөр нутгаа босоод явахна болтраа гэж хэлэв надад болохгүй гэсэн. Тэгээд урдх хормоо гэднэ өрөг үйднэ ашиг уршиднэ гэж байгаа юм болдгоо. Ардх хормоо гэднэ үед мөн өхөр молдно гэж ярих юм байна. Тэгээд та нар өнөөдөр энэ ирээд нар хамжээ эзэн хааныхаа загсан захиагийн мартын үгүй өргөөгдөө дамжуулж явж байгаа ажлын сайн урагшаа өвшгөн болдгоо. За тэгээд өөр бүхий сэтгэл санаандаа байсан юмээ биетнэ хөлхөтэй хүмүүс хөлөмдөө мөн хэркэсэктийн хүлж чаддаг. Тэгээд марухаараа хайдонага welcome таажууд бархат баярлалаа.
Дараагийн манай Монгол улсаас ирсэн Sam баяр бөөдний ирэх. Next one is representative from Mongolia, Sam Bai Bojin. Sam Bai is living around Maryland and then teaching in the Mongolian Urtum schools and other activities. Please welcome.
Honored elders, respected guests, and dear friends from our Mongolian communities. Бүгдээрээ сайхан үжиж байна уу, сайн байцгаана уу? Монгол тоорхтон, Монгол ахын дүүс минь та бүхэндээ энэ өдрийн халуун мэндчилгээг дэвшүүлж байна. My name is Sambayar Beijing, and Beijing is really meant for the capital city of China because half of my dad's relatives are from Xinjiang, Uyghur Autonomous Region of China that I have traveled many times. And I have my blood relatives born and raised in China. And that's why I have a last name quite deep in meaning and really represents diaspora Mongolians all over the world. I'm one of the teachers of Mongol Irtim School. And can I see all the Mongol Irtim School kids and teachers, please? Mongol Irtim School. Yeah. So I am one of them. Today we gather to celebrate the 37th Chinggis Khaan ceremony, which has been almost 4 decades, which is unbelievable. It's very important day to celebrate. And because of COVID-19, definitely we skipped a few times. However, it's my honor to come back after maybe 6-7 years. Because I was here about 2017 or 18, one of those, and then it's my second time here. Chinggis Khan ceremony, a moment to honor a leader whose legacy continues to inspire unity and strength, not just for Mongolians, but for the world. Chinggis Khan was more than a conqueror. He was a visionary who understood the power of unity and inclusivity, which is a very important word for Americans, the West. In any country that want to prosper, the word inclusivity is a very important word, which our leader Chinggis Khan practiced it perfectly in his time. He built one of the world's greatest empires by uniting people across tribes, cultures, and religions. His policies protected the freedom of worship for people of all faiths, Christians, Buddhists, Muslims, and others, laying the foundation for harmony amidst diversity, which still even America or Europe barely able to make it, even after a few hundred years of trying to implement this one. This principle of religious freedom, championed by Chinggis Khan, influenced leaders far beyond his time, even after 800 years today. Even George Washington, the founding father of the United States, where we live in, drew inspiration from such practices. Just as Chinggis Khan fostered unity by respecting and protecting different beliefs, Washington ensured that religious freedom became a cornerstone of the American nation. It is a principle enshrined in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, a testament to the enduring relevance of our ancestors' vision. For Mongolians living in the United States, where this group here represent. This connection is deeply meaningful for all of us and beyond our family and relatives. As we embrace the opportunities this nation provides, which I mean America, we also carry forward the values Chinggis Khan taught us: unity, respect for diversity, and pride in our heritage, in our dress, in our language, motherhood, everything else. These lessons guide us in building strong communities, which is unbelievable that we are carrying it, whether it's in China, Russia, Central Asia, whatever. Even in the United States, we still keep our Mongolian language, keep our dress like they are right now, contributing to the fabric of this great nation. At the heart of this effort is education, such like Princeton University here in New Jersey, Harvard University. For any big empire, education has been the cornerstone of that nation. Same thing for Mongol Cultural and Language School in Maryland. It is a vital institution that bridges generations. As you have seen, our kids come and greet our great leader, inspirational leader, Chinggis Khan. It is a place where our children learn the language, history, and traditions that define us as people. Mongolism helps our youth understand not only the pride of being Mongol, but also the global significance of our heritage. Through its programs, Mongolism instills the values of unity and resilience in our children, connecting them to the timeless legacy of Chinggis Khan and the shared ideals of leaders like George Washington. It reminds us that while we honor the past, we're also building a future where our identity thrives and strengthens the communities we are part of. As we celebrate today, 37th ceremony for Chinggis Khan, let us recommit ourselves to unity as we see here how many colors, how many ethnic communities come together under one roof. Among Mongolians across the world, within our communities here in the United States, by supporting institutions like Mongolian, which you can go to our table very soon, we ensure that future generations carry forward the lessons of strength, pride, and inclusivity that Chinggis Khan and leaders like George Washington exemplified. Together, we can continue to honor Chinggis Khan's vision of a united and strong people, while contributing to the principles of freedom and diversity in the nation we now call home. Thank you so much.
자, 저걸 따라만의 어그멍이 틀어lut 나름 밀. 제 비 나름 밀기 센텐도 같이 비는 테널 수하르네가 하이버는 그럭사나들이나. 나름 밀거에 빅버 어그멍이 역서로 올리 멍은 할래 살버 함단 소르체스 들 마나스터 암피거로 비트니 센텐도. 나름 밀거에 태바질린 토르치 멍은 주딘 헐서요 위치고스건 그거 몽린 어럭출런에 들러 나사란 통신을 게임도 보니마 제가 들어봤으니 그 만에 다녀 못 듣자르미 못 듣게 나인드가 안에 몽을 소록치도 그거네 걸럭은 둘러죠. Next one is representative from Southern Mongolia. I would like to say a couple of words about him because I know him well, and we are from same school, same department, and called Mongolian Language and Literature. Mr. Narenbek has dedicated his life to preservation of Mongolian culture, language, tradition in Southern Mongolia. As a long-time writer, journalist, activist, and dissident, he wrote, edited, translated, and compiled numerous books, journals, and a huge volume of Mongolian dictionary. As one of the key leaders of Mongolian student movement in 1981, he has fought tirelessly to defend the right of South Mongolia over the past 50 years. So please welcome them.
За та бүхний амрын нэг хэдэн Чингис хааныг дахилхийг Америк улсад олон жил зохион байгуулж ирсэн эрхэм мөндөд хүмүүстэй чин сэтгэлийн талархаа хэлэх юм. Өнөөдөр монголчууд бид шинэ шалгалт сорилттой тулгарсан нөхцөл байдалд хаандаа дахилга өргөж байна. Бид бүхэн монголоор над явахын тулд дэлхийн олон үндэстэнтэй мөр зэрэгч нь орчхын тулд Чингис хааныхаа авгаа хэлс алтан зургалыг ахин санаж оюун санааны дундэршгүй уурхаагаас нь хүч чадал сүх зүлдэр авч өөрсдийн сэлүүн чилгэнхийг мартах ёсгүй. Монголчууд бид жил бүр хаандаа дахилга өргөж өчил өчиж өвдөр шаслалд явуулдаг нь хааныхаа нэр зүрийг хөдөөж готаахгүй. Үлэн тучаад ухар үл шингших, уухан тучаад нохой үл шингших, уудгүй ухаант дараа үр хацус болохгүй гэдэг нь андгаад хангагаа илрүүлэх явдалтай билээ. Хаандаа өргөх хамгийн сайн технологи тавлаг бол монголчууд хоорондоо ноёвтой байх, уг учраа бүрэн ололцох, сэтгэл санаагаа нэвтгэх, их тус итгэдэг байх, сэтгэлийн хөлбөр нөхцөж, андын юмар хамтран ажиллах, соёл уламжлалаа мөн хадгалах явдал юм аа. Хааны манд зовд төссөн, бүтэд төмөлсөн ариун намтар, зөөд бүтөөсөн нэг нэлсийг Монголын нот товчоо нэмэх ариун сударт тэмдэглэсэн бидний ирээдүйн галт замыг урдаас зааж чиглүүлсэн ач холбогдолтой. Хаанаа тусахөр тэр судраа байн дахин уншиж түүнээс нь эдэж авах ёстой. Интернетийн цаг өрөнд монголчуудын ахуй байдлын тухай мэдээлэл, ялангуяа өөр монголчуудын тухай мэдээлэл дэлхийн нийтийн санал сонирхлыг өдөр тургамаар хурж Чингис хааны өр удмын хав тавилан олонний анхааралд өргөн өртөгдөг болж байна. Жишээ нь монгол хэлэнд ямар асуудал тулгарч байна гэдгийг дэлхийн дахин мэддэг болж байна. Европоос 2 тивийн хэргийг явцуул байсан Чингис хааны монгол хэлээр бид бүрэн бүтэн уламжлахын тулд ямар ч саад барих, хаш туутрыг төвчин тулах болно. Хэлэн аврах ажил дээр үр дүнтэй хамтран ажиллаад үүнээс хөнөө хайж буй гэдэг нь харуулах цаг хүрч ирлээ. Монголын нот төвчөн дотор Чингис хаанаар удирд болсон монголчууд яаж ажиллаж байлаа? Хаанаа дахиж байгаа бид өнөөдөр мөнхүү төвж ажиллаж чадвал ач тусыг олно. Сэргэн амтнаа. Нийлэх, хамтрах, нөхцөх, өрхөн мэд хүчээр нөгөх үлгэр жишээ товчооноос харж суралцъя. Ганцаараа биш, гал олноороо гар гараа холбон зүтгэе. Хамтын хүчээр хийж бүтээсэн зүйлээр нь Чингис хаандаа өргөн болгон төвшүүл байя. Энэ жилийн дахилгаар бид хөлнийхэн төлөө нэгдэн тэмцээс нураалгийг нийт Монголтон гаргая. Хөл соёлын төлөө, хүний эрхийн төлөө магнит үлсийг олд өртөл, улийнхаа үлсийг магнит гаслал, урагшаан томуулж сарлаж сугай. Мөнгөн төмгийн хүчин дараа, нэг хааны суудаар Монгол үндэстэн мандан бадрах болтугай. Баярлалаа.
Thank you, next one is Hazara Mongol representative, Dawood Chinggis. Dawood Chinggis is business owner and living in New York with his family. Dawood has been working with us on the ceremony for last 10 years or so, as far as I remember. So please welcome Dawood.
Thank you, Dr. Chulu. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, my name is Dawood Chinggis. I am luckily involved with Chinggis Khaan ceremony for the last 12 years. So first of all, I really congratulate the Mongolian American Culture Association for our Chinggis Khaan ceremony. I really appreciate, and I'm really sometime giving them a credit for how long they are working on this, 37 years. And their dedication, their hard work to combine us together to bring in one platform. So not only to know each other, but to share information, to know about each other issues, problems, and all the celebration, happiness about our great culture and our great leader, our mentor, our
Khaan, Chinggis Khan, that is like something on the face of earth. It is amazing to relate yourself with Chinggis Khan, one of the biggest empire that he built from a small town. It is, of course, not easy, and still it is a kind of, I would say, education. It is a subject that the entire world is still discussing, although it's not getting that much attention. But still, we are happy that we are Mongols. Beside this, as we always get together and share information, always we have some issues which are big, like we have problem for our Mongolian brother in China, that they have less representation, nobody's talking about them. It is not like properly addressed in different like world stage and political arena. But also we have problem for Hazara Mongols, Mongolian inside Mongolia, we have problem for Buria, Tuva, for all of us. I'm not going to talk in detail about all these things, but one thing which concerned me, one of our best friend, he got arrested and still he's in prison. Mukhbayar, he is one of the best dedicated professor in Ulaanbaatar, that he always worked for Mongolian around the world. So from this platform, I would like to request all of you to remember him, to talk about him, to discuss his issue, to approach any organization, any platform, any leader in Mongolia, outside Mongolia, to talk about him, to discuss about him, to help him as much as we can, because he was the one who gave his entire life, he dedicated. We are enjoying our life while unfortunately he is living in prison. So especially from this platform, I would like to request Mongolian government and Mongolian embassy to take this issue seriously and help him out. Like, he is not a criminal, he is a political activist. Always he talked about culture, about being together, about humanity. He never talked about anything that he deserved that treatment. Besides that, I really appreciate all of you that you are here, you listen to us, and we got together. Thank you so much.
So we're running a little bit early, which is a good thing. But what we might do is to change the program a little bit before the break. So right now we'll go to the next part, which is to introduce the keynote speaker, and that's Michael Klecheski. Let me read a little bit about, I want to tell you a little bit about Ambassador Klecheski. He served as U.S. Ambassador to Mongolia from 2019 to 22. And the final assignment in a 30-plus year career in the U.S. Department of State. So Michael has been a part of the United States State Department for almost as many years as we've been celebrating the Chinggis Khan ceremony. He previously held overseas diplomatic assignments to Russia, the Philippines, Kazakhstan, Switzerland, Poland, Iraq. I think you covered all the continents there. As well as serving at the State Department in Washington, D.C., and at the National Security Council in Mongolia. At the National Security Council. In Mongolia, he received the Order of the Polar Star from President Urulsuk and an honorary doctorate from Mongolian National University. He and his wife were passionate about Mongolian culture, as well as about the cultures of the various other countries in which they serve. And Michael's keynote address will be on the topic of Chinggis Khan, Mongolian traditions, and contemporary soft power. So this sounds like a very intriguing title to me. Michael has kindly agreed to stay a little bit after the talk and answer any questions if anybody in the audience would like to ask him anything. So with that, Michael.
Thank you.
So, and we wanted to just present with so that's the Chinggis Khan silver medal.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
And this is a plaque that you want.
Oh, thank you. Maybe I could put this around my neck. Yes? It's okay? Okay. Mashik Bairtla, thank you so much. I actually feel extremely honored to be here today, honestly. I didn't really know what to expect. This is my first time attending this kind of ceremony, but it's already been really moving and beautiful. But I'm also honored because this organization has really impressed me ever since I became more and more familiar with it. And I'll start by just telling you a few reasons why. So first of all, I admire it because it's done so much for Mongolians. And look, I'm a diplomat, so I just have to talk about this, for the Mongolian-American relationship. That's really important for somebody like me, and somebody like you, actually, all of you as well. I admire it because organizations like this that bring together ethnic communities, but that bring together anybody, really, are an important part of our democratic system. And that's really meaningful. And, you know, nowadays they talk about how that community is kind of falling apart, but I don't think it's falling apart at all. And when I attend a ceremony like this with all of you, I'm more encouraged about this sense of community. I think it's very important. I admire it for its role in educating Americans about Mongolia, as I'll talk a little bit later. But you know, I think better than I, a lot of Americans don't know a great deal about Mongolia. It's very important for an organization like yours and others to educate them. I admire it because you're celebrating this wonderful traditions, and you've been doing this for almost 4 decades, so almost as long as I've been a diplomat. I think that's tremendously important. And you're doing it in this beautiful manner that I must say I'm really impressed with. And for me, it's also really meaningful because, you know, before I went to Mongolia as an ambassador, I didn't really, honestly, I also didn't know that much about it. But it's come to mean a tremendous amount for me and my wife. I'm actually really sorry that my wife isn't here. She has one of the biggest collections of dil of anyone I know, including many Mongolians. I prefer not to find out how much she spent for that, but I do admire that. I have a few of my own as well. So for me and my wife, serving in Mongolia was really kind of transformational, you know? And it now has a very special place in our hearts. But I'll tell you, it wasn't just my wife and me. So our embassy community, which now has a fair number of American diplomats, many of them also had never been to Mongolia before, but all of them, almost all of them, I would say, after a couple of years in Mongolia, they really came to love that country. They loved it because, number one, because it was really a place where you could do meaningful work. We diplomats, we like to, you know, bring together countries, particularly when there's a lot to bring together. And that's something that was very important for us. We loved it also because we love the nature of Mongolia. And I'll tell you, I'm a city boy, I'm from New York City. So nature means a little less to me than the city of Ulaanbaatar. And, but I really came to even love the city of Ulaanbaatar. I used to go every weekend to whatever temple I could go to, and it was a really meaningful part of my life as well. And a lot of my colleagues, however, would go out into the countryside, and they would do all the wonderful things that people do in the countryside.
And, many of them would come back, they would visit some mulching herder somewhere, and they would come back always, gushing with enthusiasm for the hospitality of Mongolians. I think Robert made mention of that as well today. And we got a lot of joy and satisfaction from what I want to talk about now, and that is the history and tradition. Because for me, that was really, in fact, the most meaningful part of our experience in Mongolia, my wife and me, and even our kids. So that's why being here today to celebrate the history, the traditions, the culture, it's really very exciting. So history and traditions, every country has history and traditions, and they're meaningful in their own right as well, but I'm a diplomat, right? So having spent my whole career practically as a diplomat, what I wanted to talk about a little bit at least was how traditions and history have an impact on, or play a role in a country's foreign policy and in the country's ability to influence other countries and other peoples. So we saw that, first of all, in the face of the long periods of domination of Mongolia by its neighbors. We saw in that period that the history and the traditions really were pivotal, were essential to Mongolia's identity. In other words, when they were controlled by other countries, they clung to that history and those traditions, and it was a tremendously important thing for them. And now that they are critical to preserving Mongolia's hard-earned independence, and that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about more in a moment. So you and the audience know very well what I'm talking about in terms of the importance of that tradition, but I'm very glad that we're seeing it today. For Mongolia, highlighting to the world its history and its traditions, as I say, is really, really essential. So from a foreign policy perspective, I like to think of it as this term that Sanj mentioned, and that's half the title of my paper, and that is this thing called soft power. Us diplomats, we know soft power. Many of you probably do too, but let me introduce it just very briefly. It's a really broad concept, and it has many, many aspects to it. But in its simplest terms, it involves how a country uses its influence and culture and traditions rather than using coercion or force or military means to achieve its goals in the world. So it's something actually quite admirable, because it's a very peaceful way of carrying out your foreign policy. And of course, every country in the world has traditions, has culture, and every country in the world projects soft power, certainly. But I would say that for a country like Mongolia, soft power plays a particularly important role. And the reason for that is because Mongolia, as you very well know, has a very small population. And even more importantly, I think from this perspective, it has a relatively small army, to put it mildly. I think the estimate is about 10,000 active troops. So it obviously can't rely very much on that opposite thing called hard power, right? And therefore, particularly in the face of its two very hard power countries, nations, that is to say, Russia and China. So it has to rely very much on soft power. And Mongolia has relied on soft power in several often creative ways. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit, particularly because when I was in Mongolia, it really struck me. And I've always wanted the opportunity, honestly, I've always wanted the opportunity to bring my thoughts together a little bit and then talk about them. So this is an opportunity I hope you will appreciate, but I certainly do. One of these forms of soft power, which ironically does involve Mongolia's military, is the peacekeepers that Mongolia has sent to some of the world's real hotspots. When I was ambassador, I'll tell you, I always made a point of going to the airport to see off a new group, a new contingent of troops that were departing for some assignment, or to welcome an arriving contingent, wherever they were going or wherever they had just come from. Africa was a typical place they went to. Sometimes, especially in the early morning hours of cold winter nights, you can imagine this, on the tarmac where it's very windy, it really was cold. Fortunately, I had a fair number of cashmere sweaters, so it was fine. But I have to tell you, I always loved being there, as other ambassadors, American ambassadors, have also loved being there, doing the same thing. And I did, particularly because it was one way of expressing our embassies and the US government's support for something that Mongolia was really, really proud of and that reinforced the country's image abroad. And by the way, interestingly enough, in its own funny way, going to the airport really drove home the significance of Mongolian culture and traditions that I've started talking about. And why is that? Because on that tarmac, inevitably, 1, 2, 3 troops out of a contingent were always carrying, in addition to their backpacks, I don't remember if they were carrying in their arms weapons, but they had their backpacks, lots of gear, but at least a few of them always had a morankur with them to demonstrate to other cultures and to show their own, and to share with their fellow troops Mongolian culture. So that's one way in which Mongolia uses its soft power, and it's very effective and very well known. Mongolia also uses its peacekeeping role, the same role, in another important way that also involves this thing called soft power. And that is that every year it holds its annual Khaan Quest exercise. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. For us diplomats, it was a tremendously important ceremony and exercise, really. It brings together every year for the last 21 years, I guess it's the 21st iteration. It brings together troops. This year it brought together troops from something like 20 countries. India, China, Japan, of course the US was there, Egypt was there, many, many others. And by playing host to all these countries and playing host so that they could all share their experiences of peacekeeping, that was also a way of demonstrating that Mongolia is a constructive force for peace in the world, and therefore, again, reinforce its image abroad, which is what soft power, after all, is all about. So another way is Mongolia has used its political stance, and I sometimes describe it, I hope you'll agree, friend to all countries, enemy to none, to advance its soft power. And given this status, the reason that's important is because it offers its country as a place to bring together other countries to address the world's problems. So again, it's trying to show that it's constructive. It is indeed being constructive. And the most striking example of that, I think, is this thing called the Ulaanbaatar dialogue. Sometimes we shorthand it and say UB dialogue, very commonly used. For 9 years now, Mongolia has invited representatives from the key interested countries in that region and elsewhere, including, of course, North and South Korea, and the US also is there, to meet annually to discuss the Korean Peninsula. So it's a tough issue, obviously, right? Korean Peninsula is full of complications, dangers, etc. And some years, of course, the dialogue is more productive, and some years it's not as productive. But I think it's safe to say that throughout the world there's a great deal of appreciation that Mongolia offers itself and organizes this kind of a dialogue to try to find avenues for peace in one of the most dangerous parts of the world. So these represent some of the ways that Mongolia has used its soft power. I think they're really important and really, I think the right word is impactful, right? And the bottom line message, why is Mongolia doing all this? The bottom line message, at least in my terms, is it's showing that Mongolia has a significant role and a constructive role to play in the world. So to put it another way, the world benefits from the existence of an independent Mongolia, and therefore keep Mongolia independent. I think it's the subtitle of this message. But for Mongolia, its history and its traditions also offer a wealth of soft power resources. And for us diplomats, I think the term for this is usually called public diplomacy. Public diplomacy essentially means governments using things like sports, culture, other stuff to convey their image to the rest of the world. All countries use these sorts of resources. So arts, as I say, sports, theater, just to name a few. And as I'm struck, because I have been ambassador there, the US government has long been sending cultural figures abroad, for example, to show that our country is rich in creativity and diversity. In my time as ambassador, funny enough, the most popular, I think, soft power cultural visit we had was from a group of hip-hoppers that showed their skills, their art, both in Ulaanbaatar and I don't remember the other city, maybe it was Darkhan, maybe it was Erdenet. But it was very, very popular. Often, usually, every government does this, but there are other ways of doing it as well, sometimes that have nothing to do with the government. And I'll just say, Taylor Swift, when she travels abroad, she's a form of soft power as well. It's not necessarily sponsored by us, but when people see Taylor Swift and love her music, they're also thinking to themselves, wow, the U.S. is a really creative country. It really knows how to make wonderful music. So that's another form of soft power. Of course, this is something that countries tried to do in Mongolia, democratic countries tried to do in Mongolia, even before Mongolia became independent. But it was very difficult, obviously, to do because the communist authorities, I need not tell you, discouraged it. But even then, it's worth noting that Western influences were powerful, as I think many of you know. And I think the best example is something that is a statue that stands very near the State Department store in Ulaanbaatar, and that is the statue of the Beatles. They never visited Mongolia, but their influence was certainly felt there. It showed sort of this sense of a free spirit, and it was something I think that really drove the independence movement in its own subtle kind of way. So as I say, the monument to the Beatles, right in the center of Ulaanbaatar, is therefore, aside from many other things, a case study in the impact of the democratic world on an authoritarian system, and therefore it's another example of this thing that I've been talking about, soft power. So because it's so rich in traditions and has such an amazing history, Mongolia has always had a wealth of soft power resources. And there's always been a lot of soft power involved in Mongolia, even when it isn't the government sponsoring it. So ever since its independence, the government has engaged in cultural diplomacy, and I'm sure many of you have been either to the embassy or to the consulate or to the mission for some cultural event that they've sponsored. And by the way, on that note, let me just say I'm really happy to see Ambassador Ankbayar here. He and I worked together I hope it was very constructive, at least it was from my perspective, when we were in Mongolia together. Although the roots of Mongolia's traditions and culture, of course, existed long before Chinggis Khan, he has been kind of a focal point, at least for the rest of the world, for projecting Mongolia to the world, including of course, to the US. And that's, of course, because Americans, when they think about Mongolia, what many of them know best is Chinggis Khan. Genghis Khan is, I guess, the way we say it, right? Unfortunately, in fact, for some of them, there's not a lot of knowledge beyond Chinggis Khan that they're able to harbor. And some Americans, those who are not as steeped in Mongolian history as all of us in this room are, associate him with power, with force, with violence, but with little else. This is a very simplistic, not a very positive view. And in fact, let me quote here one of Mongolia's very well-spoken foreign ministers, who's quoted as having said that Chinggis Khan was, quote here, a good guy with a terrible international press. I think it's a nice way to put it, actually. So on the internet in the US, I know this because my kids have told me about it, you can find popular influencers who stress how many people were killed, how brutally as Chinggis Khan formed his empire. Some of them, however, give little attention to his contributions, his positive contributions that we've been talking about to world civilization. And that's why it's so important that historians are showing the general public the positive contributions to civilization that Chinggis made. And here I will just note that perhaps for me at least the best example is Jack Weatherford, who by the way just wrote another book about Mongolia, just published. This is something that a number of exhibits over recent decades have also sought to show. And most of them use Chinggis Khan, the word, in their titles, even if he isn't always the subject of their exhibits. And many either explicitly or implicitly stress his positive role in world development, which we're all very happy about. So in effect, they describe him as the great civilizer. That's kind of a summation of the themes. So let me just give you a few examples. Already in 1994, American Museum of Natural History in New York put on an exhibit titled Empires Beyond the Great Wall, the Heritage of Chinggis Khan. In 2002, the Metropolitan Museum, also in New York, held an exhibit titled The Legacy of Chinggis Khan. And by the way, I was just speaking to a professor who was involved with that exhibit, who told me that it was such a big success in New York that they shipped it to the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, which is one of the best museums on the West Coast, after it scored all the success on the East Coast. Then there were other exhibits. There was one called Modern Mongolia, Reclaiming Chinggis Khan. That was in the early 2000s also. And more recently, there was The Real Chinggis Khan, Bringing the Legend to Life. So many of these were privately organized, not without, I think, any government, Mongolian government role or US government role either, of course. But lately, what I want to stress is we've been seeing more and more examples of this kind of exhibit, but ones in which the Mongolian government is playing a major role. So I would say the current government, Mongolian government, is stepping up its cultural diplomacy, and thus, to continue our theme, it's stepping up its projection of soft power. So let me just give you a few examples that I found really interesting. The most obvious example, obviously, is the Chinggis Khan Museum in Ulaanbaatar. I don't know, have any of you been to the Chinggis Khan Museum? Not many, but a few, that's good, yeah. Just a second. Of course, the Chinggis Khan Museum is not only about Chinggis Khan. Its exhibits start from the early nomadic states and they end in the 20th century. But Chinggis, of course, is the focal point, not just in name, but also in what is shown. It was built amid a bit of controversy, as I think everything was a bit controversial in COVID times. But I have to tell you, from what I saw, it was tremendously impressive. And I do know that it's now a prime destination for tourists who are visiting Mongolia. I visited before it opened, but it was already, the finishing touches were being put on it. I was actually really sad that I had to leave Mongolia before the opening ceremony. It would have been really wonderful to be there. And it's a great example of soft power, which conveys both to Mongolians, especially from outside Ulaanbaatar, and to the whole world the significance of Mongolia's most important historical figure, but also kind of the richness of its history and culture more generally. So let me give you just a few more examples. First is a major exhibit about Mongolia that opened finally in the Museum of History in the French city of Nantes last year. I stress the word finally because the project had some delays, and these delays were caused by the Chinese government trying to kind of take over the message, right? So it was first planned in 2020 in another French city, another French museum, but it had to be delayed because the Chinese government insisted on putting its own spin in this exhibit on Mongolia's history. Eventually, that idea was kind of dropped. It wasn't very popular, and it was reorganized, the exhibit, now with loans from the Chinggis Khan Museum and with the formal approval or sponsorship or agreement, I'm not sure what the right word is, of both the French president and the Mongolian president, so symbolically very important. It opened last year, and it was a victory, I would say, for Mongolia's soft power, and if I can also add, not much of a victory for Chinese soft power. It's to be followed by an exhibit in London at the Royal Arts Academy, a very distinguished place, titled Art of the Mongol World, again to be done with Mongolian government support. So last year, Mongolian Culture Minister Noming signed an agreement to this effect with British counterparts, and now the preparations are underway. After London, also in London, what has been described as the first Mongolian theater production of its kind to travel internationally on this kind of scale just took place. It's called Mongol Khaan, and the story takes place long before the Chinggis era. My wife and I had the honor, the privilege of seeing it at the State Academic Theater, that beautiful, I think it's Pink Building, right, in Ulaanbaatar. And it was really a spectacular performance with beautiful music, beautiful decorations, and a nice theme as well. Like the exhibit, by the way, it also ran into problems from China when it was preparing to make its test run, because it was supposed to be test run in Inner Mongolia, but there were problems, technical problems, that maybe suggested the Chinese government wasn't too enthusiastic about it. Eventually, it was performed in London, and after that, it just closed recently, I noticed, in Singapore. I'm not sure what goes next, but it's definitely something worth seeing, so I do hope it comes to the US. And then, of course, I can't fail to mention another great example of Mongolian soft power. I already mentioned Taylor Swift, and that is the Who, which my wife and I got to know in Ulaanbaatar, and our son got to see performing in New York City. So the groups, you all know this, the group's use of throat singing and traditional instruments has gained it international popularity, with a different target audience, I would say, than the ones that go to the exhibit or to the theater. But nonetheless, in some ways, maybe a more meaningful target audience, if I can say that. And it's funny, just as I was writing my remarks and thinking about my remarks for this, a friend of mine who doesn't really know much about Mongolia at all, in fact, the only thing I think he knows about Mongolia is that I was there, he wrote me that he had watched a concert of Iron Maiden. Do you all know Iron Maiden? Maybe some of you do. Okay, thank you. Rock group, right? From the 70s, 80s, I'm not even sure. And that one of the other groups playing at that concert was The Who. And he emailed me to say that he was amazed at the instruments and the sounds, and he really loved it. So he used the word awesome, which I think is a great word. It certainly gave him, and I think a lot of other people in that audience, an appreciation of Mongolia and its culture and traditions that he would not otherwise probably have had. So there's lots of other examples that are closer to home, and I just want to mention, because I am the president of the Mongolia Society, that one of those examples was very close to my home and my heart, and that is the Mongolian embassy asked us this year to have a panel of scholars talking about the Moran Hur. And we, of course, did it. We were very happy to do it, and I have to say, it led to some really interesting presentations about the Moran Hur, its structure, the way it's made, the sounds that come out of that instrument, but most importantly, I think, its cultural significance. So I think this is another good example, sort of on a more academic level, of this soft power that I've been talking about. So why have I been focusing on soft power all this time? I do so partly because it's become a really important concept in international relations and foreign policy. It was first initiated by a very distinguished political analyst named Joseph Nye. Joseph Nye is famous for a lot of other things, but I think maybe most of all for this, because he used two words, right, soft power, to encapsulate an idea that everybody knew about, but that really was never systematically studied. So that's important. So that's one reason. I do so partly because for a country like Mongolia, as I said, with limited hard power and surrounded by neighbors who have a lot of it, soft power is tremendously important. But I also do this partly because of my own experience as a diplomat in Mongolia and even elsewhere. Because I was always struck by the appreciation that Mongolians expressed for how much our embassy respected their culture. So we at the embassy, and me and my wife were tremendous enthusiasts of that, were always going to the theater, to concerts, whatever, as many cultural events as we could, Mongolian cultural events. We didn't do this because we wanted to project hard power. We did this because we loved it. We found it fascinating, we found it beautiful. And we always talked about it, by the way, on social media. We'd come back from some concert and say, wow, that was really amazing. The Mongolian culture, yet again, is convincing us of its glories. But, it's interesting the fact that we were appreciating it so much, it was really noticed by Mongolians. So people I did not know, I had never met in my life, would come up to me on the street in Mongolia. I had a reputation for kind of walking around on my own. They would come up to me and say, thank you for being so respectful and so loving of Mongolian culture. So it really shows, I think, the impact of culture and what it had, the impact of culture on foreign policy, but also on people-to-people relations. And I'll just say this celebration today, therefore, I view it not just as an expression of respect for Mongolia's greatest historical figure and for the country's rich culture. No question, that's the most important aspect of it. But I think it also shows that the U.S., an organization like this in the U.S., also values Mongolia, not just politically, but for the contributions it's made to the world. And with that, I thank you. Ashik Bayatullah. Thank you. Thanks. Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ambassador. Wonderful talk. Fascinating to hear about the concept of soft power and how it's expressed in Mongolia and elsewhere. So the ambassador has kindly agreed to take a few questions from the audience. If anybody has any questions, please stand up and ask, and ambassador will be kind enough to answer a few questions. Yes.
Please, yeah.
Michael, thank you.
Sure, thank you. By the way, not to put the pressure on, but I always say a speaker always worries whether he's going to get questions. At least I do. Because if they don't get questions, it's kind of a dud, right? It's like nobody was listening to you. So I appreciate questions. Thank you. Take it away.
Асуултаа монголоор сонсох уу, англиар сонсох уу?
No.
I feel you learned Mongolian language already. That's why.
I tried. I know. I understand.
And you already graded in Mongolian language.
I did.
And I have seen some of your videos in Mongolian language on Twitter. And your embassy was really active during that time when you were in Mongolia.
Thank you.
Anyways, my question is this one. Thank you so much for the work. It's almost like a PhD degree on soft power, and then really teaching us like a university level lecture on Mongolian soft power. My question is this one: where U.S. and Mongolian relationship going? Of course, it's very hard to answer in a practical manner, but at least in a way of casting a vision, or in a dreamy way, like US have developed a huge relationship with Korea, Japan, Israel, Ukraine, just the latest few years, whether it's controversial or not. Where do you see yourself with this kind of soft power of Mongolia, where US and Mongolia relationship could go in maybe 10, 20 years? And what kind of role we can play, at least like this 100, 200 people?
That's a great question. People who work for the U.S. government on foreign policy always have a very positive spin on things, right? But I have to say that I'm quite optimistic about the relationship continuing to grow. When I was there in my first half year, we actually upgraded to this thing called strategic partnership, and that was one step in improving the relationship. That's in some ways a symbolic step, but it's much more than that, because bureaucratically it means that there's more focus in the US government on Mongolia. But there's kind of two ways, or at least two ways of looking at this. So one is, unquestionably, Mongolia has always been this democracy in what is often called the difficult part of the world, right? And that is very important for U.S. administrations. I think that was certainly important for the first Trump administration, and certainly for the Biden administration too. So the idea of democracy, I think, is one of the things that attracts Americans' attention when they want to focus on Mongolia. I think that now there's a lot more focus also on economic possibilities. Economic possibilities are always something of importance to the American government, American business, private sector, but I think more even now than before, and that's because Mongolia has not just soft power resources, but it has a lot of economic resources. And I think the Mongolian government clearly wants to take advantage of that, as they should, of course. But the US government sees some of these as being very strategic, right? Like rare earth minerals, for example, is one. So that's another area that's important. And I think that gives a lot of room for an improvement, a continued improvement, because I think the relationship is actually very good between the two countries. But I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and there's a lot more focus. There will be, I think, a lot more focus on that. Maybe in the Trump administration, the focus will be a little more economic. In other administrations, it was more kind of human rights and democracy. But it doesn't matter. I think they work hand in hand. So I'm actually quite optimistic about the future of the relationship. Mongolia has an uncanny ability, I'll say, to walk carefully so that they do not anger either of their neighbors too much, but at the same time continue a great relationship with other countries. That's partly because of soft power, partly for other reasons. I hope that answered your question a little bit. Thanks. Thanks. Oh, thank you. Other questions?
I have a quick question.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Do you have interest or a plan to visit Southern Mongolia, what others call it Inner Mongolia? Do you have an interest or any plan to visit?
You know, I never did visit when I was in Mongolia, and I always wanted to, but I mean, I don't have a plan to visit right now. But yes, I'd love to see it. I know that the culture is different. It was interesting during the Morin Hor presentation that I talked about at the Mongolia Society. There was a description of the fact that the Morin Hor in Inner Mongolia sort of sounds different and has even a little bit of a different structure than it does in Mongolia. So there's a lot of differences that will be fascinating to see. So of course, you know, there's some political sensitivities. I'm a private citizen now, but still, yes, in general, it would be interesting to see it, yeah. Some point. Other questions, anybody? Oh, good, thanks.
It's not a question, but
Okay.
I want to thank you for during COVID-19 when the State Department, they said they were closed down, but when we contacted the embassy, they were just excited to help, and they really did. So thank you.
Thanks, that's nice, thank you very much. It was hard, you know? It was a difficult time for everybody, but we at the embassy did not enjoy the experience any more than any of you did, believe me. It was a tough period, but we continue to work together. Speaking of soft power, the US government gave a lot of COVID vaccines to Mongolia. It took a little while for that to gear up, but once it happened, it was another form of US soft power in Mongolia, and it was really important actually, so we were happy to do that. Thanks. Okay. Well, thank you in that case, unless somebody has a question. Anyway, I really enjoyed it. Thank you very, very much. Oh, you have more questions? Good. Fine. Good.
Michael, I have been, of course, the question you have answered is very sensitive to answer, and of course, you know, in private conversations, many things could happen. In terms of Mongolian language, let's say Mongolian language, Mongolian script, whether it's Uyghur Mongolian or Tut Mongolian language, Totusik, how you see yourself, because you have learned Mongolian language, you tried it, and what is the possibility of monetizing Mongolian culture and heritage in America, among American people, just in case if it becomes a potential business?
Can you define monetizing? I'm not sure.
You have to make business out of it, which means teaching Mongolian language, where you see yourself, because benefit of learning Mongolian language, only thing that, because Mongolian parents, we spend a couple $100 a month to teach our kids Mongolian language, it's worth it. And we know where our investment is going, return on investment is really high, but what do you think about American people?
Oh, well, first of all, I didn't answer the second half of your question, or at least the second third of your question before, and that is what role your organization can play and does play. So I think, as I said before, I think your organization is informing, educating Americans who know very little about Mongolia, about this wonderful country, and I think that's important. And what I've noticed is there's more tourism now from the US and from the rest of the world, by the way, to Mongolia. Maybe that's partly post-COVID enthusiasm, but I think it's more than that. I think infrastructure for tourism is slowly improving, or even more than slowly improving, it's improving in Mongolia. So I think for all of you to be letting the Americans who know very little about Mongolia, letting them know about that country and how wonderful it is, I think that's the biggest role you can play. And it's important economically, actually for both countries, but it's also, from a political point of view, very important. I think now United Airlines is talking about direct flights, isn't that right? In May. Yeah, so, okay, so we already have, you know, signs that it'll be easier and therefore cheaper to get to Mongolia from a place like the US, where it's very far and expensive, as you all know, and I do too. But I think that's one positive thing. For a long time while I was in Mongolia, the talk of direct flights was one of the things that excited people most. It was a slow bureaucratic process, but I think we've made actually very good progress. And if we have direct flights, of course they're not going to be every day, but if you have direct flights, I think, again, it'll be important economically for Mongolia, and I think it'll be important for the U.S. so that there's more opportunity to see this great country. Thank you.
Will that be reciprocal? Will Mia fly here?
I think it'll be reciprocal. Yeah, it'll be round trip, right?
No, Mia will fly here too.
Yeah, the MIA is doing the business feasibility study on it. And also we would have to have the technical certification or technical inspection from U.S. Side. Make sure that the airport is good for direct flight for American aviation companies, as well as vice versa, Mongolian yet to fly here. So we expect to have Mongolian airline to fly between the two countries probably at the end of the next year. But not on the East Coast, but more likely on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's what I meant about the bureaucratic challenges. It's a lot harder to establish direct flights than people think. It's a very complicated process, but it's worth it. Well, thank you very, very much. I really enjoyed it, and thank you.
Thank you for that. So we can take a break now. We'll reconvene at 3:30. Is that all right, Phil? Here we have Sally Greenland, Sally McLean Greenland, who's going to speak on the topic of She Who Rules the World, Succession, Political Authority, and the women who assumed the office of Great Khan in the early Mongol Empire. Seems there were a lot of feminists back then. So a little bit about Sally. She's a PhD candidate in the history department of Columbia University. She studies the complexities of the Mongol Empire and its successor states under the supervision of professors Robert Hines, Morris Wasabi, and Nicola Di Cosmo. So two of those have been previous speakers at this Chinggis Khan event. So now we actually have an academic descendant, you might say, of earlier speakers. So with that, let me introduce Sally, and we're going to hear a very intriguing talk, I'm sure.
Okay. So, our understanding of Mongol political authority is fundamentally distorted because we've been asking the wrong questions and focusing on the wrong people. Consider this. Between Chinggis Khan's death in 1227 and Möngke's election in 1251, elected Great Khans governed for just 14 years combined. Unelected rulers, primarily women, governed for 10 years officially, but almost 16 in reality. They ruled longer and kept expanding the empire further, yet we've relegated them to the footnotes of history. We can no longer neglect them. It's time to rethink how we understand leadership in the Mongol Empire, particularly the functions and authority of women who filled the position of Great Khan. Let me show you what we've been missing. Let me see. In 1248, when the Great Khan Guyuk died after only 20 months on the throne, Ogul-Chimish assumed command of the empire that spanned 7.5 million square miles. From her position at the head of the empire, she sent this message to France's Louis IX. Peace is good, for when a country is at peace, those who go on 4 feet eat the grass in peace, and those who go on 2 feet till the ground. This we send you for warning, for you cannot have peace if you are not at peace with us. We bid you then, every year, to send us of your gold and silver, so much as may win you our friendship. If you do not do this, we shall destroy you and your people. These weren't empty threats. Ogul-Chimish had inherited a vast territory that had steadily expanded under her mother-in-law, Torgin Khatun. Yet today, we know remarkably little about either of these women who ran the largest empire the world has ever seen. So today, we're going to talk about the Great Khans who weren't elected and how they ruled from the empire's highest political office. I've given the title of the position, the interregnum ruler, since they ruled between Mongol regnums, or periods of official rule by a Great Khan. And I apologize for how clunky it is, but I would be very happy to hear some suggestions to change it in the Q&A. So, while the position was filled by men and women, because its longest tenure holders were women, we're going to look at the women who filled the office of Great Khaan. My talk will be divided into 3 sections. First, I'll give you an overview of the early Mongol succession's guiding principles, highlighting some of the institution's nomadic values and priorities. Next, I'll talk about how the interregnum ruler was selected and why mistakenly calling them regents impairs our conception of the Mongol political system. And finally, I'll discuss the roles, functions, processes, and powers. So first, Mongol succession. So succession was not governed by the rigid laws of inheritance. Instead, it was based on a flexible, meritocratic system rooted in the steppe tradition. Unlike monarchies, where political authority automatically passed according to the principle of primogeniture, which is where the oldest son inherits first, steppe succession prioritized the election of the best leader, regardless of birth order or direct inheritance. In practice, this meant that political authority could pass from a Khan to a brother, a son, or even a distant cousin, an uncle, as long as that chosen candidate was perceived to be the most capable. The nomadic principle of seniority played a central role in the selection process. Seniority was not the oldest, but rather the most experienced man who had garnered the most respect. He was also, crucially, the person others envisaged as most capable of commanding loyalty and leading the military. Determining who this man was, however, rarely went smoothly. On the contrary, the period following the Khan's death was a period of uncertainty, where factions would vie for control. The one way the candidates established their dominance was by engaging in violent clashes. Often mischaracterized as senseless bloodshed, these civil wars that raged during the interregnums reflected nomads' determination to choose a Khan with a keen eye for war and politics, with a personality to command a following, and the ability to conquer his own people and subjugate them to his absolute rule. Once the candidates rose through this process, it was up to a group of respected peers to come together, formalize their choice, and raise their new Khan to office by collective authority. The span between the death of one Khan and the election of another could take months or even years. During these long periods, the Mongol Empire needed to maintain its stability. Governance needed to continue without interruption. Someone would have to be put in charge. Someone would need to administer the empire. This is where the role of the interregnum leader comes in. Installing an interregnum ruler was a critical offshoot of the early Mongol succession process and involved immediately elevating an individual to a political void left by a Khan or a Great Khan's death. The person chosen for the position was typically someone close to the deceased leader, such as a primary wife. Having regularly sat by the Khan's side in the daily court that was held in her dwelling, a widowed Khatun was one of the best positioned people to know the empire's ongoing business. Arguably then, a Khatun was often chosen above others because she had the experience, the necessary political connections, and could maintain the stability of the empire until the Kurultai could select a new leader. The preference to install a savvy person to the government, such as a widowed wife, as an interregnum ruler, again highlights the Mongol succession principle of seniority. Leadership should always go to the experienced and capable candidate, even in an interregnum. Mongol political ideology demanded at its most essential core that the office of the Great Khan during a regnum or an interregnum always be filled by the most capable candidate. These rulers were not simply placeholders. They were critical to ensure the security and unity of the empire. And because of this security and the critical nature of the security, only the most qualified individuals could assume the role. The role was also not a passive one. The void left by a Great Khan required wielding power at the same level. Interregnum rulers made decisions on military strategy, diplomatic relations, trade, internal governance. Curiously, despite their profound authority, the person elevated to the role was not elected by collective decision, and certainly not at a Kurultai. In fact, this led scholars to argue that the role itself was self-interested, and it was a weak Mongol political institution, and that under their rule, the empire's stability was little more than a semblance. This argument is based on the presumption that a steppe rife with civil war indicates failure. primarily a regent's failure to keep the empire united. Scholars misidentify Mongol interregnum rulers, however, as regents. Regents are appointed to govern in place of a monarch who is absent, incapacitated, or considered a minor. But a Mongol interregnum ruler did not wield political authority based on an absent or incapacitated Khan. The single precondition of their installation was that the Khan was dead. They also didn't rule in lieu of a minor, because the Mongols never elected a child to be their great Khan. Mongol succession as an idea was intentionally made flexible to avoid this exact scenario. It could not tolerate inexperience. It could not elect children. The Mongol principle of seniority prioritized the most experienced candidates, and those candidates were always adults. Fundamentally, to be a regent, you have to wield someone else's legitimate power on their behalf. Torgin was a regent when she ruled for 6.5 years on behalf of Ogedei after he basically retired at the 1235 Kurultai. She was not, however, a regent when she ruled in her own right between Ogedei's death and Luyuk's election. The Mongol succession process is a post-mortem process. No one knew who the great Khan would be until they were installed. No one could have become a regent based on the fact that no one could elect a child. Khans on the steppe did not officially designate their heir. Some made suggestions, but statistically their preferences were actually undermined more than they were upheld. Even Chinggis did not officially designate his heir. Ogedei, Chinggis' pick to succeed him, only became the great Khan after participants of the 1229 Kurultai decided by collective agreement to install him. For the 2 years between Chinggis' death and Ogedei's election, Tului Khan actually ruled over the empire as its interregnum leader. And Tului's rule might have been because Bort predeceased Chinggis, but I'm not sure. You can ask me in about a year's time when I'll be done. The Mongol interregnum ruler could not be a regent because the Mongol succession process didn't designate heirs. Life was tenuous, the steppe was harsh, and if the Khan was dead, it was now especially violent for anyone contending for the throne. Scholars who accuse the position of being self-interested as a weak Mongol political institution, a sham or a token of stability and unity, just because of these succession wars, misses the point. This ruler was not put in place to prevent the very violence that was essential to determining the empire's next leader. She was put in place to offer the Mongol Empire ideological stability and unity. With this in mind, I'll turn to the next part of my presentation, which is the interregnum ruler's functions, processes, and powers. So apart from maintaining political consistency, which we've discussed, an interregnum ruler's function was ideological. It was their duty to protect the throne from violence and to protect the Mongol political process. This person harbored the idea of ideology of Khanship itself, that a single person had the right to rule over others, whilst also simultaneously guarding the office as an emblem of the group's political right to choose their leader together by collective authority in communal election. Holding the empire steady, she prevented candidates and stakeholders rushing to grab power, attempt coup, or dissolve the empire before a Kurultai had spoken. In fact, despite the militarized culture and wars of succession, no great Khan was ever installed by military coup or proclamation. Torgin Khatun had been ruling the empire for several years, first in her husband's place and then in her own right, when she performed this exact function by protecting the integrity of the throne from Chinggis' younger brother, Timush. After his nephew Ogedei's death, Timush had been one of the empire's eldest and most senior Chinggis elites. He was also a serious candidate for the throne, but reportedly frustrated by the endless machinations delaying the selection of a great Khan, and perhaps convinced that his claim was the strongest, Timush marched to the head of a large army, intending to seize the throne by force and violence. In response, Torgin sent a message saying, "We are the Helens, the daughters-in-law. We have set our hopes on thee. What is the meaning of thy coming with an army and so much gear and equipment? The whole of the Urus have been disturbed." Emphasizing the many ways she could halt his progress, Khorgan then sent Temujin's own son, a man she had been long holding as hostage in her camp. She sent him back to his father to reiterate the seriousness of her message. After hearing from Khorgan, Temujin was reportedly ashamed, regretted his actions, and excused himself on the pretense that some disaster had befallen him and he was in mourning. Rashid al-Din's report of Khorgan's response reads as a terse-lipped rebuke of disrespectful and boorish behaviour. Her thinly veiled snub accuses one of the empire's most senior members of forgetting his place. As a candidate in the process tightly bound by expectations of acceptable and unacceptable behaviour. It also sneers at his lack of respect for his Mongol kinsmen and their right to participate in an esteemed political process that was governed by protocol. When he initially set out with his army, Temujin was willing to risk personally disrespecting Khorgan. But endless machinations or not, until she called the Khurultai, Khorgan's camp represented the central institution of Mongol political ideology. Her camp was the office of the Great Khaan. By marching on it, Temujin was essentially marching on the Great Khaan. The community that saw Temujin was prepared to overturn protocol and process and install himself by military coup would not tolerate it. Despite his respected senior status, extensive military experience and considerable following, his behaviour was enough to eliminate him as a contender, forever. Temujin never made another bid for the Mongol throne. As this interaction shows, interregnum rulers like Khorgan and Ogil Chaimesh after her did not receive universal admiration or unwavering support from their Chinggis peers. Yet their authority to oversee process and protocol was without question, especially when it came to electing a new Great Khan at the empire's grandest event, a Khurultai. This event met on the summons of the interregnum ruler. But while the Khurultai was an astounding spectacle of revelry, planning one was the absolute opposite. Organising the event required extensive, persistent correspondence with endless stakeholders. It was routinely delayed by internal squabbles, domestic and foreign wars, illness, death, and bouts of prohibitive weather across millions of square miles of territory. Even in ideal conditions, organising a Khurultai took years. Scholars disagree at how finalised the decision of the Great Khan was before the Khurultai. Some claim that genuine discussions took place at the event, while others argue that the decision was essentially made beforehand. Regardless, it was undoubtedly a momentous occasion, a 3-month-long spectacle of power. It was a chance for the empire's key players, men and women, to flaunt their influence, impress their vision of the future, and lay their claim to the share of the empire's growing wealth. It was a political congress with profound implications. But it was also a party and a Mongol homecoming, one that renewed a sense of shared identity by bringing the long-separated Mongol elite back to their homeland and into each other's orbit. The Khurultai then was much more about reifying nomadic identity and fortifying elite Mongol unity than it was about choosing a new Khan. Empowered with the responsibility to call and organise this event, an interregnum ruler did more than steadily govern through a period of when violence threatened to tear the empire apart. She protected the very kernel of empire itself, its promise that all nomads would benefit from immense prosperity if they could only remain united. Nomadic identity and Mongol unity lay at the very heart of the empire. The role of the interregnum ruler existed so that eventually, when a Khurultai crowned a suitable candidate, Great Khan, the title continued to mean something, that there was still something to be Great Khan of, that violence had not dissolved. I would argue, paradoxically, that the most severe threat to the Mongol Empire was not the threat of civil war, especially not when it was generated by the succession principle of condoned violence. The empire's threat, its highest threat, was always the risk of dissolution. An interregnum Khatun was responsible for ensuring ideological security. She judged when the fractured and battered group should be called together for a 3-month-long reunion party. As long as she upheld political protocol by performing her task at the appropriate time, the Mongol elite could trust that the idea of the unified empire was guarded, As long as she performed her duty, the Mongol elite could trust that the succession process, political protocol, and the idea of the empire was safe. So to wrap up, our understanding of the Mongol Empire has long been incomplete because we've overlooked the periods when women ruled from the office of the Great Khan. Trapped by our own biases, we've dismissed them as placeholders and regents, when in fact they were sophisticated political actors with real power who fulfilled vital functions. These women, Tabrin Khatun, Ogulchemish, and the many others who acted as regional Khans, weren't just maintaining the status quo. They were protecting something far more precious, the very idea of Mongol unity itself. While violence raged as contenders fought to prove their worth, these rulers kept the actual office of the Great Khan safe. They prevented the premature seizure of power, protected the succession protocol, and most importantly, preserved the empire's ideological core. The role of interregnum ruler was, in many ways, an embodiment of the Mongols' political system's sophistication. These rulers had to balance seemingly contradictory forces. They had to protect the throne while allowing controlled violence to determine the worthy successors. They had to wield absolute authority while preserving the collective right to choose the Khan. They had to maintain unity while allowing the divisive process of selection to unfold. Perhaps most remarkably, when the time was right, they organized the Kurultai, which was not just an election, but a profound celebration of Mongol identity that brought scattered elites back together, renewed the crucial bonds that kept the largest empire in the world, that kept together the largest empire the world had ever seen. This position, and the women who held it, weren't footnotes in history, they were central to it. They ruled for as long as their elected counterparts. They maintained the empire's expansion, and most crucially, they ensured that when a new Khan was finally chosen, there was still an empire left to rule. It's time we recognize these women for what they truly were. Not regents, not placeholders, but rulers who filled the office of the Great Khan in their own right. Women who wielded real power and protected the very essence of what made the Mongol Empire possible. Thanks. And if you have suggestions on what to call them, I'd be very grateful.
So that was a fascinating overview of the role of Khatun, I guess, Khatuns and this interregnum period, a very important part of Mongolian history, and I did not know the significance of the Khatuns in this. So let's open it up. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes, Michael.
Well, first of all, thank you. That was really interesting, and I mean, I learned a lot from it, I have to say. But I guess what I wanted to ask.
Proud.
That too, right? Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to ask the fact that they're not well known, right? In academic circles and more generally, do you think that's because they were in an interregnum status, so it's kind of hard for historians to deal with it? Or was it, to use the simplest word I can think of, sexism?
A bit of both.
Okay.
I think the historians since the 17th century who've been reading through a lot of the sources have been very interested in the actions of the men in those sources. The sources that they're reading were also written by men who understood power when it came in the male form and didn't understand power when it came in the female form. So just, on a numbers basis, the statistics are the male sections of the sources are much larger. They seem to imply that they're doing the same stuff, but literally Rashid al-Din says at one of his points, like, I'm so sorry I keep talking about women, but they were in charge of a lot of stuff, so I kind of have to. So there's even admissions in the text to say, the original text from the 15th century that say, these women were so important we can't write them out. So I think it's a bit of a combination of the original text saying that and then scholars, over the last 100 years not being interested in women.
But the other part is also relevant, right? The fact that it's an interregnum, so
Yeah.
people don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, but the same thing, like, it's an interregnum because we've chosen it to be an interregnum. If, you know, if you want to say they're a regent and they channel someone else's authority, a lot of women, for instance, European history have been dismissed in that same way. So I think it was just copy-paste instead of being like, oh, hold on, this is a completely different political system. Instead of pasting our version on, we should actually just think about it on its own terms. So yeah, that's my theory.
Hi, thank you, Sally.
Hi.
It's a great, amazing speech. I want to ask maybe a casual question. I'm interested, what brought you into the research? And what do you find is most difficult part is in the research? Because as everyone can understand, if you're doing East Asian studies for like 800 years ago, there could be have a lot of problem in finding resources, or in this special perspective that all the history writers are probably predominantly male. And for this, you are researching women's history. And also, even as a Mongolian, we know there was a very amazing established women leaders in the history, but they are, as you correctly pointed out, in a lot of way silent. So I'm just wondering, for you, I would assume your native language is not Mongolian.
I'm Australian, yeah.
Yes, and what do you think is the most difficult part in this? And the first question, don't forget it.
Yeah,
what brought you here?
Come on.
Okay, thank you. It's a long question.
Thank you. So I came to this world because I read a book. I read Morris Rasabi's Kublai Khan, The Life and Times, and I had been asked to write a TV show that was 60 to 70% women. So as I was digging in history for ideas to write this TV show, I discovered this book and I read it on a Thursday. I got on a plane on a Saturday and I got on a horse in Mongolia on a Sunday. And I rode across the steppe for 3 months, much to my husband's dismay. And then I came back to New York and I finished writing the TV show, and I was no longer interested in writing it, so I handed it off to the writing team. And I met with Morris Rasabi, and he said, I've done this for 60 years and I think you're onto something. So we worked on getting into Columbia. So I was much more interested kind of by the end of that process of looking at the original sources. Which brings me to the second part of your question, which is how. The most difficult part is inevitably language. I cannot tell you how many times I've been like, I have no idea what this says. I work in classical Chinese. I've learnt classical Chinese to be able to read these documents. I'm working on Persian to be able to read the Persian documents. And then I work in French so I can read the European stuff. I hope to be honoured enough to spend years learning vertical Mongolian so that I can eventually read his secret history in my own way. But ultimately, just like every other historian or person working on the Mongol Empire, you have to rely on your peers. I have stuff in my dissertation that ranges from Armenian coins all the way through to an edict actually issued by Trekin Khatun. It's a fantastic edict, half in classical Chinese, half in Mongolian, and it basically says, dear so-and-so of Chinese Prefecture number 7, if you're too busy to build this giant warehouse and organize the production of this text, get your wife to do it. Put her in charge. To me, that's amazing. The assumption that a woman in China would be able to take over the job of her husband with a massive, it's just a huge leap. And so to me, that shines a light on a world we don't understand. If someone was she was issuing those edicts, and people were following them, the world is so different from what we think it looks like. So yeah, that's my answer.
If you only have time. Thank you for the speech. It's really nice. Also, another wonderful, like almost PhD level dissertation to us in a very short period of time. Thank you so much for spending all these years to learn Chinese, Persian, and also that's
I
one.
promise to get to Mongolian, I promise.
Awesome, thank you. And my question is like one question, but two sets is number one, what the West can learn from whichever you are. Of course, this is very academic. The politics is quite away from academic knowledge. However, just in your personal opinion, what the West, especially like America, you know, EU, United Nations, just to have the West who should learn from all these lessons, which practiced for a few hundred years or more than that, number one. Number two, what Mongolia should learn from it. Of course, we have all this wonderful history and everything, but nowhere, at least in my personal study, Mongolians trying to go back to what we implemented for hundreds of years. So what do you think we should learn from our own lessons, which practiced for hundreds of years, and what the West should learn from it too? Thank you.
So the two parts, the first is what should the West learn. I think I'd probably wrap up in what should the world learn, only because I'm from Australia and it feels a long way from, I guess, the European world. It's really got to be something I think I'll probably say for the next part, and that is to take what the thing needs to service it. Instead of trying to constantly wedge the world into a vision that we are so determined it must look like, if we just stop and evaluate what the actual thing needs, what the process might look like, if we treated people with respect, if we believed them, if we engaged with every person that was before us, I think we'd have a really different version of the world than we currently have. I feel like the current version of Mongol history does a lot of work to push out the very essence of Mongol history. It pushes out its nomadic nature. It pushes out key individuals who very clearly directed a lot of it. And I think that the energy spent fighting what it is takes away from the brilliance of it itself. And I think my recommendation for Mongolia today would be something similar. You know, we all spend a lot of time looking to the leaders of the largest economic leaders in the world. But by doing that, particularly the nomadic nature of Mongolia gets squashed. And yet it is what makes the country and the idea of the country incredible. And I think that's what I find so impressive about this political system. It wasn't trying to be anyone else. It really lent into its values and its cultural assumptions, and it made an incredible system that was able to rule the world. And I think that's, I mean, as cheesy as it sounds, I think if we really trust ourselves and the things we stand for, we inherently gain power.
Okay, so in the interest of time, Sally, I know there's probably many more questions, but maybe we can, you know, if anybody has a question, we can take it to Sally during the next, before dinner. So, yeah. Okay, so here's the annual report. I'll just give a little bit of history and a little bit of information about the programs. And if I have time, we'll go into future outlook. NACA was founded in 1988 by our founders, Gomojab Hangin, Losun Kyod, and Sorjolama. We did a moment of silence in memory of them this morning, before. We were incorporated in 1992 as a 501c3. And we have a mission of promoting and preserving the memory of Chinggis Khan, that's primary. Promoting and preserving Mongol culture, that's also primary. And providing charitable and humanitarian support to Mongolia, and that's also primary. So we have three primary missions. Here are the names of the board of directors. I won't read them, but they're all committed to the activities and the mission statement of the Mongol American Cultural Association. So the Chinggis Khan Memorial Foundation is responsible for hosting and organizing and carrying out all of the important activities associated with the Chinggis Khan ceremony itself. It was established as a separate arm of the Mongol American Cultural Association in 2016. It achieved MAC's second vision as a targeted initiative to carry this goal forward. And it's consistent with the One Mongol principle, which we heard quite a bit about before in different settings. I think Michael touched on it, Sally certainly touched on it, that seeks to promote the view that all Mongol peoples all over the world share a common cultural and historical origin. Now, this is carried forward by an executive board. We also have a community advisory board and a cultural advisory board, whose members are all here. The scholarly and cultural support, here are just a few of them. I'm not going to read all of them, but this is basically the report. The annual Dilawag Memorial Service, the annual Torja Lama Memorial Service, the TMBCC support, the annual MCC conference in Washington, the Mongolia Society annual meeting. We support all of these. We also have a scholar in residence, Dr. Gilyana Dorjieva, who we'll hear from shortly, and Dr. Darina Gadeva. And this year we provided Zud relief to Mongolia, and we also had a program supporting the Wildlife Conservation Society. Both of these are targeted to children, well, there were two initiatives targeting children for the WCS, mainly to raise awareness of the wildlife of Mongolia. Now, the Mongolian Children's Aid and Development Fund, I did touch on that a little bit. This was established in 1992 by Tony Ettinger. He couldn't make it today, so I'm just going to say a few words on his behalf. It has been a continuous program of charitable support that included clothing, and we supported the Christina Noble Foundation for a number of years. The Mongolian Arts Council, we still support. We're going to have a separate fund for them. Orphanage care in Kalmykia, and so on. And some future programs, I think we would like to extend the World Wildlife Fund support. And now let me turn to this year's Cultural Humanitarian Award. We try to give a Cultural Humanitarian Award recognizing someone who has done something extraordinary for preserving or promoting Mongolian culture in the broadest sense. And so this year's humanitarian award is Pamela Slutsky. She's a former ambassador to Mongolia. Last year, she established the John Gomajov Hangin Scholarship Fund at Indiana University. And as part of this award, Michael Klachevsky is here to accept the award on her behalf. So, Michael.
Pam, who's a good friend of mine, by the way, so I feel particularly honored to be accepting it on her behalf. First of all, she wanted me to tell you that she really regrets that she couldn't make it today, because she really wanted to, because this relationship with this organization means a tremendous amount to her. So she actually wrote me a little note here, and I just wanted to tell you that she feels very honored about this award. It's a big deal for her, and I know that personally as well as sort of officially, right? She also asked me to thank the association for all it's done for the Mongolian Studies Support Fund at Indiana University, which, as Sandra just mentioned, is named in honor of Professor Gombojao Hangin, who is a member, as you know, a founding member of the Mongol American Cultural Center, as well as of the Mongolia Society, so close to my heart as well. And just to say that this organization's support will help ensure that Mongolia's unique contribution to world history and contemporary global events continues to be taught and heard in the United States and North America. And that's also something very, very important. So on her behalf, let me thank you very, very much. Thank you.
So as part of the award, NACA will be contributing $5,000 to the fund this year, or maybe early next year. So let me just end by, what can you do if you share some of the goals and mission of the Mongol American Cultural Association? Just a few words. You can support local Mongol artists. You can support Mongol language schools, encourage your children to learn Mongolian, and honor the memory of Chinggis Khan. That is some of the things you can do. Sam might have, brought up the question before of, how do we monetize Mongol culture? And we can tell you from our experience that it's not possible to monetize the Chinggis Khan ceremony because we lose money every year, typically $10,000 or more in hosting this. So we never make any money on this. So it's not, that's our experience. Don't think you can monetize Chinggis Khan. It's not going to happen. Okay, and of course you can join with MACA and the Chinggis Khan Memorial Foundation to promote the mission too. So those are some simple things that people can do if you so choose. And Chulu, yeah. So let me turn it over to Chulu. So now we start Darina and So let me introduce MACA Scholar in Residence, Dr. Yelena Dorjieva. She is a graduate of the St. Petersburg Music Conservatory. She's an ethnomusicologist, is that right? Yeah, and has helped support Mongolian culture initiatives that MACA has been involved in for the past 5 years. And it's a great honor for us to give Yelena the opportunity to speak on her recent field trip.
Thank you. Both Darina and I would like to thank Mongol American Cultural Association and Sanjiao personally for the support of our research. Given our time frame of 10 minutes, we decided to present a selection of brief videos to provide insight into our fieldwork. Our expedition was conducted in Bulgan Sumov Haupteimak. It is a remote area located approximately 2,000 kilometers from Ulaanbaatar. It is the Mongolian Altai Mountain, the territory near the border with China. It's somewhere here. Why we decided to work there? The people of Bulgan keep traditional nomadic pastoralism. They are doing 4 seasonal migrations. Some families travel up to 500 kilometers to reach winter pastures. In this regard, Bulgan is a rare example of the preservation of traditional farming. It is important to know that in contemporary Mongolia, only 15% of the population keeps nomadic herding, whereas 60% reside in Ulaanbaatar. It is our aspiration that the government will provide support and foster the development of herding, as it constitutes a fundamental aspect of the nation's economy, sustainability, and cultural distinctiveness. The population of Bulgan is around 10,000, and about 8,000 of them are of the Torgut ethnic group. These people are descendants of the Torguts and Khoshut from the Kalmyk Khanate near the Volga River, Ijlim Torgut. They are descendants of those who, with Ubashi Khan, went back to Altai in 1771. This historical event is known as the Torgut Escape. Currently, there are 5 Yasin. In English, it could be translated like clan. Vangin, Tajin, Belin, Hovuksarin Torgut, and Khoshut. There are about 2,000 Khoshut, and now they identify themselves as a Yasin of Torgut. Bulgan Torguts differ from other Western Mongolian people by their clothes, women's terlik and tsegdik, men's lavshik, famous footwear toku, in which, according to legend, they came from the Volga, and the custom of respected aged men to wear a white scarf. For Bulgan Torguts, the mountains, springs, the Bulgan River are still inhabited by spirits. Lulusan, Sabdak. Relation with these spirits have strict rules. One of our significant discoveries includes narratives surrounding the magical stone Zadar, the magical stone to make rain and to change the weather. We have documented a written incantation in classical Todobichik, and Arena will present these materials during the upcoming annual conference of American Culture for Mongolian Studies. Each Yasen worshipped its own mountain. On September 8, we participated in the veneration of the Bayin under Ule, sacred mountain of Tajin Turgut and Hoshuls. There is an war at the summit of this mountain, and access there is allowed to men only. However, a collective prayer was organized at the base of the mountain. You will watch video segments including an offering to the fire, a prayer led by Buddhist monks, and the dedication of sheep to the Lord of these ancestral mountains. Next, I will just Citria Wow. I'm sorry. Cannot So these lucky ships were released to roam freely. It is prohibited to harm or kill them. It is a law that anyone who meets these dedicated animals, Sitriamal, should provide them with food and water. And now let me introduce the main singer of our presentation, Domma Khultsarin Turgut. She is 93 or 92. In 1943, her parents escaped from Khobuksar in Xinjiang, which is now the territory of China. Her song of Lost Girl. When I saw the nomadic camp early in the morning, I thought it was my parents, but it turned out to be a camp of neighbors. No matter how numerous the nomadic camp of neighbors was, it cannot compare with you, my dear ones. This song and the story about that song date back to the time of the Turgut flight from the Volga. This story could be easily adapted into a movie. So there were a young man and his beloved girl. When the boy, his name was Sukvin Minde, and his family departed on the appointed day, we know that the date was kept secret. The girl was in a distant pasture and was left behind. Sukvin Minde, with his parents, arrived to Khobuksar, but he could not forget his love and chose not to marry. At the age of 30, he decided to come back to Volga and find her. It was winter, and to tackle the challenging journey across the frozen Volga, he rode a male camel in its mating season. Only a male camel with such a wild spirit could navigate this hardship. The story had a happy end. Sukvin Minde found his beloved and brought her to Khobuksar. Domma shared that this song is part of her family history. Sukvin Minde was one of their family, and this song has been preserved through generation in their family. And this is long song, Urtendu. We met great singers and captured a range of recordings, but sadly, Urtendu long songs as well as traditional dances, bibilgi, are fading from the nowadays life of Bulgan. Wedding rituals usually are held in September. Here you may see a few pictures of the sewing, needlework, and installation of the house for the young couple a few days before the wedding. And I felt truly happy while listening Urtundu at a wedding. It was the second day of the celebration when the bride arrived to her in-law parents' home. The groom's grandmother, Önür, who is 102 years old, started that song. Significant part of our interviews focus on what I call milk song invocation. Sometimes sheep, goat, or camel refuse to nurse their newborn. In this case, herders use the special singing words to force animal to accept and nurse newborn. For communication with the sheep, herders use special words, pega or toga, like this. With go churu. Here, and at the conclusion, I would like to present the performance of the Chinggis Khan warrior song. It's a very unusual song. Bulgar Turguts take great pride in referring to themselves as the cherished and the most devoted warriors of Chinggis Khan. They attribute the origin of their ethnonym Turgut with the word Torgun, the silk, the best warriors dressed in silk clothes, which was not just a precious garment but protection against arrows. This song was performed by Doma, who learned it from her uncle in her childhood. Her uncle warned her against singing it for strangers. Doma told that she, for the first time, shared this song with the researchers, with us. This song is of the silk-dressed warriors embarking on a campaign. But this is a deeply human song. Warrior sets out on a journey, but he doesn't desire war. Instead, he dreams of returning home. A stone the size of a tree, if only it would become flat. If only the decree of Chinggis Khan would order us to return home.
Harman çimen çoğu haftız ki hıyanat han çinsin zerdik her tabi hıyanat Girin çimen çoğu girdis ki hıyanat
So here I have to stop. And thank you for including our report in today's program. I would like to convey my sincere appreciation and gratitude for supporting our fieldwork, which has enabled us to engage with, learn from, and document invaluable materials. I believe that a deeper understanding of our history and tradition will lead to a more sustainable future by honoring the diverse Mongolic languages and cultures. We could make stronger the future of Mongolia.